Episode 147 of the Pass in Season 2. I cannot believe the show is still going on. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually glad I'm still rocking with y'all and doing these weekly shows because it gives me a chance to, as I call it, connect with my listeners as well as kind of keep folks in the loop and in the know on what's going on in the sports world, tech world, things of that nature. Um, if this is your first listen or your first time tuning in, I am your host, BT. We've been doing this show for about 2 years, still running, still strong. A lot of learning, a lot of growing, a lot of things have changed. If you are following on Instagram on past podcasts, you'll see how much has changed as far as like my setup. At first, it was just a couple of things. Now it's down to a microphone, a mouse, a laptop, my tablet. So it's getting more organized. Still working on small stuff to kind of get it to that next level, but we're working on it, getting it done. These podcasts are uploaded weekly on Spreaker.com. If you want to check out any episodes, you go to Spreaker.com/Brytay Podcast. That's Brytay Podcast. Negotiating if I'm gonna lift everything and move because lift and moves are always tough, especially when you have information already shared. And then it comes down to social media platforms, things of that sort, such as with with the podcast page, which is passpodcast.com. If you want to go to listen to any shows there, you can go there as well. And the microphone that you are hearing and the sound of this beautiful, lovely voice is thanks to the Blue Yeti microphone. Not gonna give y'all a lot of BS and fluff today. It's a lot of stories to talk about. I looked at the listing and I wanted to make sure that I got everything that I knew was kind of in the trend and what was going on with the world of social media and with the world of sports. I will tell you all in advance, tech wise, I really didn't catch or grasp anything. So there's very limited tech talk. Of course, there will be an honorable mention thanks to Ass of the Week. So we'll get into that later on. If you are, and as I've stated, if you're new to the format, we kind of do two things. We talk about sports first. I give you a lot of information as to what's going on in the world of sports. Then I do the stuff. So it's various things. It could be tech related, video game related, music related, anything in that realm. I have a story that I possibly may add to the stuff. It's not really a big story, but it did happen. So I'll be sure to remember that. If I don't, then hold it to my head, not my heart. But we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the story. And I'm sorry before I forget. Also, if when you get to the end, my favorite part, Ass of the Week. We like to always point out those who are doing things that make a lot of sense in the world, and we'll leave it at that. And as I share each week, and as I made sure I'm sticking to my word and doing, if you are in crisis, and I always keep this page as the first tab, and it's going to be the first tab every week. If you are in need and are in looking for help, contact the domestic violence hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233, or you can go to www.thehotline.org. I also did share last week, if you're looking for a way to reach out to someone to get help or you need to make a SOS emergency call, you can do that and not have to actually do a lot of options to unlock your phone and things of that sort. There are those. That story was shared last week on the podcast. So if you want to go back and listen to episode 146, definitely tune into that show. In the early stage, I talked about the domestic violence hotline number as well as those resources and tips. Today, before I get in, and also I want to share this story before we jump into the sports world. I did promise a friend of mine that I would get. I'm all about. I've been very much learning how to brand to get others out there and share what they're doing. I had to kind of learn a little bit too that it's okay to get other people's businesses and get their networking on board, but I also got to make sure I'm getting mine as well. So what I've decided to do, I did want to be a man of my word because I did finally go visit a friend of mine's venue. She is pretty much, she's practically like a sister to me. Her name is Renetta. She is doing a business called A Taste of Heaven RVA. It consists of her husband, and also a lady, Charlene Saunders, who I met with. I did meet them last week to kind of check. Actually, it's ironic. Last week, I was working on the podcast, recorded. After I finished, I went ahead and went out in that area because I was going to get a snapback. If you follow my personal page, Bright82, you'll see the hat that I bought. And I was an MTV hat. And while I was there, I said, well, since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and put an order in, since I've been talking about coming out here to support her. So I did go out there and get some food. I got like something small because I was kind of just on the run anyway. But she definitely is good at her craft. The name of the business I did not state, of course, is called A Taste of Heaven RVA. Now, I do want to emphasize that you want to be sure if you're looking for her, she is on Facebook. It is going to be A Taste of Heaven RVA. So just be sure to look for that when you're looking up her business. And it's a soul food and Caribbean based vibe as far as foods. They have a pretty wide variety of foods, and anyone who knows me knows that I'm probably the pickiest eater in the country. So a lot of things I kind of am still in that testing and trying the waters. But I do have a pretty simplified menu of a couple of things that she does make or has set up. Uh, Oxtail meals, pork chop dinners, southern style mac and cheese. It's quite a bit. Chitterlings, burgers, two-piece chickens fried with whitings. Chitterling, I probably said chitterlings already, but I'm saying it again. Um, Definitely, if you want to link up with her, she's here in Richmond, here in RVA. The address is 10101 Brook Road, Suite 252. So basically, if you're in Virginia Center Commons, and if you've gone into the food court, just look for her sign to be listed. You'll see Taste of Heaven, Heavenly Cafe. You'll see it set up right there in the mall. The easiest way that I can describe it, if you are a frequent visitor of the mall, if you're coming in to the food court, when you first walk into the food court from outside, you'll go into your right. You'll pass by the little arcade, whatever was left of the arcade, fun and games, and probably not too far from there is where she has her stand set up to do food. So if you are listening to the podcast and you want to go get some food and get a setup, she'll get you right. The store number, I want to make sure I do put that in there, is 804 and they do deliver as well. 804 if you're looking to get orders with her as well. And also, if you want to reach out and send an email, that'll be a taste of heaven rva at gmail.com. And I'll be sure I have the card with me, so I'll make sure I take a picture of the card and it'll be on the podcast page and everything of that sort. So, um, doing my best to still stick to branding like you mean it and getting others out there. But of course, I want to get this show on the road. So definitely, supporting the local business, local brand, and local movement. I will be implementing more individuals who are doing things that don't want anybody to go unnoticed, but give everybody their proper shine. So we're not gonna chop too heavy. The first story that's on tap, if you have or have not known or have not realized, and this will kind of be a two-part story, but we'll jump into it in that regard. The Cleveland Cavaliers have kind of fallen apart. Everyone has looked at Cleveland as the team to beat. Right now, this year so far, it's kind of been Boston, Toronto, then Cleveland. But Cleveland's been so inconsistent, we don't know which Cleveland we're going to get. Tyronn Lue has been making a lot of coaching changes, which has been for the better, in his words, I guess. But it's not really anything that's like a ooh and ah. He's kind of been making lineup rotations, and we'll jump into those. Well, I mean, really not much to jump into regarding that. But I will say that LeBron James did make history. He actually literally a week to the to today, because it happened right after the show, and after the show was recorded. He became the seventh player in history to reach the 30,000 point plateau. So LeBron James has hit yet another career milestone. Reluctant to view himself as a scorer, the Cleveland Cavaliers forward became the seventh player in NBA history to score 30,000 points, hitting the mark during Thursday night's 114 to 102 loss against the San Antonio Spurs. A deep jumper over Danny Green to end the first quarter put him over the mark. He immediately embraced. He was immediately embraced with one of his closest friends, Dwayne Wade. James entered the game needing just 7 points to join quite a list of guys who were already in the 30K club. Dirk Nowitzki, Will Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver issued a statement on James' achievement. Congratulations to LeBron on reaching 30,000 points. Yet another milestone in an extraordinary career that continues to inspire. Not only did the 33-year-old James become the youngest to reach 30,000 points, he is also the fourth fastest to do it by number of games played behind Kareem, Jordan, and Wilt. They show a play that's leading. Have a video that's listed showing the actual basket when he reached the plateau. James' career scoring average is 27.1, and he has averaged at least 25 points a season every year outside of his rookie campaign, while shooting 50.3% from the field and 34.3% on three-pointers for his career. What will it take for James to become the all-time leader? Long story short, he'll need to average 21.6 points in 70 games per season from 2018, 2019 through 2022-23 when he's 38 years old. So that kind of leads to that question because everyone always wonders. Now, first and foremost, before I continue, because I think this is very key to think about. When you go back and look at the NBA, and this is like minutia, but very beneficial news to look at, you had Kareem that had a record that nobody really kind of came close to, and it was kind of set in stone and was what it was. When you look at the list of players who are in the 30K club, Dirk Nowitzki, I'd say he probably has a year, maybe 2 years left. Will, obviously, he's long retired and has since passed. Michael Jordan, retired Hall of Famer. Kobe just recently retired, and he was at 33.6K. Karl Malone had 36.9K, and of course Kareem had 38.3. So when Karl Malone was in the NBA, there was talking and wonder of whether he would be able to pass Kareem. The tough part about it was looking at statistically and how his career started to, I want to say deteriorate, but how his career started to kind of decline near the end of his career. It was kind of evident that he wasn't really going to make that mark. But it was a very possible, it was a very achievable run at the time if you really go back and look at it. Right now, the question arises because now, since LeBron is played a couple more games since then and is a little over 30,000, could he beat Kareem's record? And if I were to take a guess right now, I feel like the answer is yes. And I know that's a stretch. I'm not taking a side and looking at it as, all right, I'm a LeBron supporter and he's the cheat code. I just look at it as LeBron can score at will. As much as they claim him to not, or as much as he kind of eludes himself as not being a scoring-based a scoring-based guard or forward, he distributes very much in his game. Majority of his know-how of basketball consists of scoring. He's always been kind of the not the fall guy, but they've kind of looked at him as the go-to guy for clutch situations with Cleveland and when he was in Miami. So it's no different now that he's in that position to possibly surpass that goal. Will he do it sooner? I feel like the only difference in my personal opinion, I feel like he'll do it before 38. That's just me. But of course, we have to kind of see how the years go. If he is able to play 70 games a year going up to that point, but I mean that's another 5 years. Which, if you really look at it, you can't really tell that LeBron's been in the league for 13 years, but the years have been just kind of. And I'm sorry, let me make 14 years. Yeah, I want to give him all his years. 14 years in the NBA, and he's really hasn't lost a step too much at all. So we then segue, since we already talked about last week, we gave the announcement of the starting players for the starting five for the East and for the West, who were chosen by fans, by coaches, things of that nature. Um, this week we segue into those guys who will be on the bench or the reserves that are going to be for the East and the West. And then I'll go into the format because I talked about it a little bit last week, but we'll give a little bit more attention to it this week. Um, the 2018 NBA All Star rosters are now officially set. The 14 reserves, 7 from each conference, were announced on TNT's Inside the NBA round. They do round out the player pool, which is 24 players in all, for LeBron James and Steph Curry to choose from. As the leading vote getters in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference, LeBron and Steph are captains and will choose the remainder of their squad according to the new rules. So for the reserves, as selected by the coaches on the East, we have Kyle Lowry, Bradley Beal, John Wall, which I'll go ahead and share now, is going to be out for two. They said for 2 months. He's got a knee injury. He's going ahead and getting surgery for that. So they'll be looking at a replacement for him. Victor Oladipo, Kevin Love, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford round out the East. For the West, you have Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook, Klay Thomas, Jimmy Butler, who they've kind of said day to day, but I mean, he's been playing lately, so I guess everything's okay. Draymond Green, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Karl Anthony Towns. They brought up, of course, the infamous conversation that always comes with the All Star weekend. Two of the more surprising West snubs, Paul George and Chris Paul. There was also some talk Lou Williams, in the midst of a career season, could get chosen. Uh, Beal, Oladipo, Porzingis, and Towns will all be making their All Star debuts. LeBron, Giannis, Joel, Kyrie, and DeMar were named as starters for the East, while Steph, James, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, and DeMarcus Cousins will represent the West. Um, However, with conference affiliation no longer determining the matchup of each team, who plays with who will all come down to how the draft shakes out. Since LeBron got more votes than Steph, he'll have the first pick. All the starters must be taken before any of the reserves. Steph, meanwhile, gets the first pick of the reserves. So then we're going to kind of, before we go into the picks and the choosings, there was a big story that broke, and I was, it's kind of odd because I was somewhat of a witness to this game, and I feel bad being a witness to it, but it's just the way the sports world is. And that was that DeMarcus Cousins uh, did tear his Achilles tendon, and he will be out for the remainder of the season. So if you did listen to the show last week, DeMarcus was supposed to be starting for the. He was chosen as a starter per the Western All Stars, but Pelican star forward DeMarcus Cousins was helped off the court in obvious pain Friday, with just seconds remaining in the fourth quarter of the New Orleans home game against Houston. The team announced Saturday that Cousins has been diagnosed with a rupture of his left Achilles tendon after undergoing an MRI. Cousins will have surgery to repair the injury and will miss the remainder of the season. He was expected to start in next month's All Star game, or in this coming next month's All Star game, but he will be sidelined with a projected recovery time of 6 to 10 months. He had a triple double in that game before the injury. So then that leads to the infamous question: who will be replacing DeMarcus Cousins? And the board did decide Oklahoma City Thunder, and Adam Silver actually was the chooser of the option, that Paul George will be named the replacement for DeMarcus Cousins on Team LeBron in the All-Star game. So I'm kind of giving who chose, and I'll go over that in just a bit. George earned his fifth All-Star selection and third in a row. In his first season with the Thunder, after spending 7 seasons with the Pacers, George, standing 6'9", is averaging 21 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals a game. He's shooting a career high 42.6% from three-point range. And we already talked about the injury with DeMarcus Cousins. So now we're going to go ahead and do the infamous reveal, because everyone wants to know who picked whom. And as I mentioned earlier, they were how the draft was done is for the starters, LeBron would pick his player, Steph picks his player, and they go back and forth, selecting their players. And then when they get into the reserves, it's the opposite, where Steph gets to pick first, and LeBron picks. So basically, it would end up that LeBron would get the last pick. Um, so the February 18th NBA All Star Game at the Staples Center will have the feel of a reunion tour with former Cleveland teammates LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, and former Oklahoma City teammates Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook joining forces. As the leading vote getters in their respective conferences, James and Golden State star Steph Curry were named captains for the two teams. Under a new format for the game, they conducted a secret draft from a pool of 8 other All-Star starters and 14 reserves, regardless of conference. The 12-man teams were revealed Thursday on TNT, with James selecting Durant, the Golden State forward, Irving, who is now a Boston point guard, and a pair of New Orleans stars, forward Anthony Davis and center DeMarcus Cousins, as his other 4 starters. Curry chose Houston guard James Harden, Toronto guard DeMar DeRozan, Milwaukee forward Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Philly center Joel Embiid as his other 4 starters. So it was almost to a T from just this part alone. It was mainly they picked opposite as far as conferences. So the only conference lock was for the East, you had LeBron and Kyrie, and for the West, you had Steph and Harden. But everybody else, as far as their conference, played opposite conference. But it's not East and West; it's LeBron, Team Steph, and Team LeBron. Um, James, as the top overall vote getter, had the first pick among the starters. It was assumed he took Durant, who was averaging 25.9 points, 6.9 boards, and 5.6 assists a game with the top pick. But when asked by TNT's Ernie Johnson if he had done so, James said, "I can't tell you that." Curry had the first pick among the reserves, but passed on Westbrook, the reigning NBA most valuable player, who was averaging a near triple double for the Thunder. James snapped up Westbrook, who teamed with Durant for 8 years in Oklahoma City from the reserves, along with guards John Wall and Bradley Beal. So here are the picks from gathering how they were chosen. And it's not really a solid lock, but it's kind of from what you can observe. Uh, LeBron picked Durant. Steph then picked Harden. Then LeBron chose DeMarcus Cousins. Steph then got DeRozan. LeBron had cut Anthony Davis. Steph got Giannis, and LeBron got Kyrie, which then gave Stephen Curry Joel Embiid. Going into the reserves, let's see. It's got to be an easy way I can do this. Hold on, y'all. Y'all know I'm all about simplicity if I can help it. Okay, hold on. Might be good. Perfect. Okay. So for the reserves, and to be easier, because I'm not gonna name the selection order because that'll be doing too much. For selection, Steph's bench is Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, Klay Thompson, Kyle Lowry, Draymond Green, Karl Anthony Towns, and Al Horford. For Team James, you got Bradley Beal, John Wall, as I mentioned earlier, who's going to be out, Russell Westbrook, Victor Oladipo, Kristaps Porzingis, Kevin Love, and LaMarcus Aldridge. So it was a pretty even balance of selections for between East and West, which I'm okay with. A lot of people pointed out that LeBron picked a lot of bigger guys as far as height, but he also picked players who are agile centers or agile big men. One player who was a surprising snub, but he was a snub nonetheless, was Andre Drummond. He had a pretty solid season this year. Um, but they did both speak regarding the draft. Like James, Curry refused to divulge his top pick, but I will say we did have a good time. Curry told TNT, "Hopefully, we're both captains again next year, and we can broadcast it to the world in real time." Um, they weren't really sure whether they would be doing a live televised contest of this, but they say it may be in the works next year. Um, let's see. So they talked about Kyrie being reunited with James and Love. Uh, overall, it's not a bad selection for the All Star picks, starters, draftees, things of that sort. I feel like they did it as best as they could. It wasn't meant to be flawless because of the fact that um, it's always in the air. I mean, when the game starts, it's kind of just, hey, we out here having fun to play. Usually, you don't see it until about the third or fourth quarter when guys actually get serious and intense in playing the game. So just be prepared for that. And I missed all my marks for this episode, but it's all good. So we now get into what we like to call the so there's the All Star game, which is what most people prefer to see, but there's also what they term as the festivities. Now, I have not gotten the celebrity lineup as of now because I know usually they'll mention who's going to be playing in the celebrity game, but I haven't heard or seen anything related to it. But we do have the listing for the most part of the other events that will be happening at the All Star game. And first and foremost is the slam dunk contest. The the participants in the slam dunk contest this year will be Dennis Smith, Dennis Smith Jr. I'm sorry, Larry Nance Jr., Victor Oladipo, and Aaron Gordon. For the 3-point contest, so far we have Devin Booker, Wayne Ellington, Bradley Beal, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Love. They're not sure whether Eric Gordon is going to defend his title or not, so we'll be keeping our eyes on that. For the skills competition, no one has been named as of yet, and they have. It would be interesting to see if the big men, Kristaps Porzingis and Karl Anthony Towns, participate like they did last year. And on Friday night, which is kind of one of the fun games to watch, is the Rising Stars matchup. So they have the split between uh, the world team and the U.S. team. So on the world team's kind of looking OP a little bit too, because you have Brogdon Bogdanovich, Dylan Brooks, Joel Embiid, Buddy Hield, Laurie Markkinen, Murray, Frank Nicolitina, um, Domantas Sabonis, Dario Saric, and Ben Simmons. On the U.S. team, you're looking at Lonzo Ball, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, John Collins, Chris Dunn, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Mitchell, Dennis Smith Jr., and Jason Tatum. Looking at the U.S. team, there really is no inside presence, so it's going to be a very interesting play of basketball with these two teams. Uh, Last week, I did promise you all, and I did talk about it a little bit, and I know I'm like segueing into stories kind of quick, but there's one story that I'm kind of like not pushing heavy for, but it was kind of like a heavy consumption of the sports week, and that is and I'm sorry, we'll get to that in a moment. But last week I did kind of tease or discuss a little bit related to Jason Kidd being fired by the Milwaukee Bucks. Now these stories, sometimes stories like these is always, are these really things that were the reasons why he got fired, or is it mainly just media presence saying here's what we looked at and kind of put two and two together? And one of them that came up was actually kind of interesting, and I'll go into that in a moment. SB Nation did their article on 6 reasons why the Bucks fired Jason Kidd. I'm not gonna read each one of the specific details, but I will talk about some of them and kind of give a little bit of attention. Um, Bucks management didn't believe the team could win with Kidd. They didn't trust Jason Kidd. They stated the general manager, after the, during media availability, he went on to say, "We believe this gives our team the best opportunity to have the most success this season, the success that we expect, and going forward long term." Horst said Monday evening, "You have short windows in the NBA to build toward contention and actually contend, and we didn't want to waste time in putting our team in the best position to do that." Um, Now, mind you, this story was written last week, so it's kind of had a little bit of time to sit. But that was one of the reasons why that they feel like this change happened. Two, Milwaukee's defense was awful, and it's sad to say. I mean, you getting rid of Greg Monroe, who was kind of the closest thing you had to defense. You don't really have any guys who know or understand defensive roles if they haven't been doing it before. So defense was not really one of their strong suits. Um, he kept making excuses for the Bucks' age, and I feel like teams do that very often, but it's not a justifiable reason. If that's the case, that would be the Kings. That would be the Kings' alibi. I really just hurt my knee, but you don't really have much youth to that degree. It's just mainly players who you. I mean, the purpose of the NBA and the purpose of basketball is development. And it's not like the young guys he has on the team have been back and forth between the D League and the NBA, the G League and the NBA. Thon Maker's been making his presence as known as possible. Giannis obviously has come into his light. It's an ironic situation that this happened because right after Jason Kidd got fired, and here it is this week, this coming Friday, he's planning to. Um, Jabari Parker's looking to make his NBA debut, which I'll talk about that in a moment. Um, and Kidd did make a reference about, you know, about age. I'm not going to read the full quote, but he said, we're not learning about it. It's the truth. You guys can write that we're a super team and we're really good and we've got the big three or the brood three, but we're a young team that's learning how to play the game at a high level with expectations that are a little too high. Okay, Jason Kidd, hopefully you'll find another gig in the NBA or find another role with a team. But the bottom line is the expectations are going to be high on every team because it's not just the fact that you have players on your team, you have stars who are chosen and drafted to come into a game expected to be productive. And it's the know-how, the general know-how rule of if your number is called, you got to be ready to play. And if you're not ready to play, then you shouldn't be on the court. That's just my personal take on it. Uh, Stated, as mentioned earlier, it was stated about age. The team has a young group, but it's not really that young. The average roster is 26. The average roster age is 26.3. They're the sixth youngest roster in the league, so they're not that young if you look at the NBA comparison. If I was to look at a team right offhand that's like a young team, I mentioned it earlier. I feel like the Sacramento Kings is one of the youngest teams in the NBA. I mean, you have George Hill and Zach. Between George Hill, Zach Randolph, and Vince Carter, kind of screws up your numbers a little bit, but not by that much. Core players on the team have varying ages. Number four, Kidd reportedly had issues with Jabari Parker, and it had reached a boiling point. There wasn't really a see you later, wish you the best of luck. It was kind of like, all right, see you, won't miss you type scenario between the two of them. The Bucks are underachieving, full stop. They coming off of last year's 42-40 record. It was kind of a season of promise for this year to look at. Okay, we have a chance to build and improve. You didn't lose any pieces. I mean, yeah, Greg Monroe left, but you got Eric Bledsoe, one of the top. One of the I would define one of the top guards, but underappreciated NBA guards because of him going to Phoenix and not really being seen. But it was like Phoenix was the closest shot he had of making All-Star appearances. But even with Phoenix sucking, it didn't make a difference. So Milwaukee, you would think would be the next place, but it's tough because you're in the East, where even with the East not being the greatest of leagues, you still have a lot of guards in that league as well. And number six, this was a consequence of ownership issues. And somebody brought up a good question, and the question was addressed: who is the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks? Well, that's a good question. You might know the name Mark Lasry, and it's not wrong to say he's the owner. After all, it was Lasry's relationship with Kidd that led him to the Bucks coaching job in the first place. But there are two other Bucks owners, Wes Edens and Jamie Dinan, who share power between them. According to ESPN Zach Lowe and Brian Windhorst, those three hedge fund managers don't always see eye to eye, which obviously was why Kidd was part of the problem as well as the solution by getting rid of him. Case in point, 1 year before GM John Hammond left Milwaukee for the Orlando job, the Bucks hired Justin Zanuck from Utah as assistant GM. Zanuck was regarded as the executive on their rise, and according to Lowe and Windhorst, he took the job with the understanding he would succeed Hammond as general manager. Today, John Horst is GM after 9 years in the Bucks front office as a as a as a director of basketball operations. So yeah, this story kind of tells a lot of things, but Kidd is no longer the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and more specifics may present themselves as the story continues to develop. But for now, Bucks fans can only hope their team rebounds from this midseason change and rallies to make a competitive postseason rush. And I will say, like, it's on him, but it's not on him because even though people don't like to say this or look at it this way, he's not the one that's out there on the court playing. All he's mainly there for is to kind of coach and guide the team, and that sometimes goes unnoticed when you look at situations or circumstances coming down in this regard. Um, Now, I didn't see this story, so I'm going to share this and we'll talk about it in a moment because so I'm sorry, and I'm like as y'all know, I'm always multitasking, and you probably can hear it in the recording. I'm always clicking and prepping because I'm just that type of person. It's just being active and like preparing all the topics, and it's not a disorganization. It's like an organized disorganization. That's a good way to put it. But the next story that we're going to talk about is kind of broken down into pieces, and it's going to address the elephant of the week. This won't be the ass of the week because what he did was stupid, but there's a lot that's going on with the story that a lot of people don't realize. So what I'm going to play first is a clip from the sentencing for Larry Nassar, and then we'll get into some talk a little bit afterward.
It is my privilege on counts 1, 2, 5, 8, 10, and 18 and 24. To sentence you to 40 years. And when I look at my cheat sheet, 40 years, just so you know and you can count it off your calendar, is 480 months. The tail end, because I need to send a message to the parole board in the event somehow God is gracious, and I know He is, and you survive the 60 years in federal court first, and then you start on my 40 years, you've gone off the page here as to what I'm doing. My page only goes to 100 years. Sir, I'm giving you 175 years, which is 2,100 months. I've just signed your death warrant. I need everyone to be quiet. I still have contempt powers. I told you I'm not nice. I find that you don't get it, that you're a danger. You remain a danger. I am a judge who believes in life and rehabilitation when rehabilitation is possible. I have many defendants come back here and show me the great things they've done in their lives after probation, after parole. I don't find that's possible with you.
So, first and foremost, so we're gonna read the story because I do want to chip and chew into the actual article that was shared. Um, if you did listen or if you weren't understanding or interpreting it, because I didn't see it live, so that was my first time watching it. But I mean, I got stories. Of course, you can always thank Facebook, you can always thank Twitter, Instagram, whatever. They'll give you the story before you even realize the story happened. But the initial case or the initial time frame was 40 years, and the judge really wanted to stick it to him to get him to understand the extent of how serious this is as to what he's done. So she went ahead and made the time 175 years, which is 2,100 months. That's a lot of time. I'm sorry, 2,100 months. I was sitting here like 2,100 years. No, it's 2,100 months. You sometimes have to get people to understand what they have or haven't done. So I'm gonna switch gears. Well, I'm sorry, not switch gears. I'm gonna drive back into the story of the article that CNN has related to this incident, and then we'll really chew into this because there's a lot. As I mentioned before this story, and I feel bad because I was kind of hyping it up a little bit, but I really want this is gonna be like a vast majority of the podcast because so much happened in so little time that this isn't like whether people realize it or don't know it or not. The story is far from over. It's not even established itself as to how intense it's going to be in impacting the media world of so many sorts. Once a world English is gone today. World renowned sports physician treating America's foremost Olympic women gymnast, Larry Nassar now will spend the rest of his life behind bars. The disgraced former USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University doctor was sentenced to 40 to 75 years in prison, a judge announced Wednesday after more than 150 women and girls said in court that he sexually abused them over the past 2 decades. I've just signed your death warrant, Judge Rosemarie Aquilina said in a Lansing, Michigan courtroom. I find that you don't get it, that you're a danger, that you remain a danger. Nassar had pleaded guilty to 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct in Ingham County in Michigan and admitting to using his trusted medical position to assault and molest girls under the guise of medical treatment. He offered a short statement in court, apologizing and saying that hearing 7 days of victim impact statements had shaken him to his core. There are no words that can describe the depth of breadth of how sorry I am for what has occurred, Nassar said. An acceptable apology to all of you is impossible to write and convey. I will carry your words with me for the rest of my days, the rest of your years. But anyway, and that's what I feel like he needed to say with that. But before delivering her sentence, Aquilina read aloud a letter Nassar wrote to the court recently in which he defended his medical care, said he was manipulated into pleading guilty, and accused the women of lying. I was a good doctor because my treatments worked, and those patients that are now speaking out are the same ones that praised and came back over and over, Nassar wrote. The media convinced them that everything I did was wrong and bad. They feel I broke their trust. Hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn. The letter tells me you still don't get it, Aquilina said, tossing the letter dismissively. I wouldn't send my dogs to you, sir, she added. There was reaction to the statements during the sentencing phase. The sentence brings to an end a wrenching 7 days of victim impact statements as part of the deal. There were 156 victims who had spoke uh, to to receive treatment. The you know and the story continues. I don't want to this is a very heavy topic and a very lengthy story. I don't want to read this too much and then not get to the main things that are addressed about this. I don't think he really understands the extent of what he did or what was done. His apology letter was unauthentic. I mean, I'm sorry. It was authentic and genuine to him, but it was not genuine in caring. The worst thing that you can do when you're in a position that he was in is not show remorse. And I feel like he has no remorse about what he did. I'm not gonna sit normally most times, do I feel like this and should I? No, I'm not gonna do any of that. What I am gonna do is state the truth of the matter being that this one he really need to think back and see if he can get some type of a care in the world for what went down. So with this story happening, since it was affiliated with Michigan State University, that means heads rolled. Folks made decisions in panic, and those are the stories that I have next. Like I said, if you want to read the rest of the story, I'll have it in the show notes because reading this article, it was so much that happened and so many things that were addressed. One part that I do want to talk about, so the near the end it talks about fallout only the beginning. Fallout only beginning. Though the sentencing marks the end of Nassar's time in the public eye, it has focused critical attention on USA Gymnastics, the U.S. Olympic Committee, and most importantly, Michigan State University, the institutions that employed Nassar for about 2 decades. A number of women have accused the organizations of turning a blind eye to Nassar's abuse and even pressuring outspoken victims into silence. Michigan State University, the school I loved and trusted, had the audacity to tell me that I did not understand the difference between sexual assault and a medical procedure. Amanda Tomashov said in court. The master manipulator took advantage of his title. He abused me, and when I found the strength to talk about what had happened, I was ignored and my voice was silenced. All 3 organizations have denied wrongdoing and said they reported the sexual abuse allegations to authorities once they learned about them. And like I said, that article continues on. So this then ties into the school, Michigan State University. So I'm gonna, this is like I said, this is one of my I'm trying things out podcast. So as you all hear me saying, as I'm always known for stating, just bear with me. This isn't going to be as long. The other listen wasn't that long either, but this is a 1 minute, little under a minute listen from Larry Nassar himself. So I'm going to just play this and then we'll talk about the next story.
It's just a short statement. Your words these past several days, your words, have had a significant emotional effect on myself and has shaken me to my core. I also recognize that what I am feeling pales in comparison to the pain, trauma, and emotional destruction that all of you are feeling. There are no words that can describe the depth and breadth of how sorry I am for what has occurred. An acceptable apology. An acceptable apology to all of you is impossible to write and convey. I will carry your words with me for the rest of my days.
So that was the that was basically the video that that was the story that I just read to you all before we started this part. So they had that in a separate um, link. Now, because of this happening, as I mentioned, Michigan State was impacted and was affected by this as well. So this story then comes out. Now I want to make sure I got my dates. Give y'all, as I love to learn and help in sharing. We always like to give timelines. The Larry Nassar sentencing was on Wednesday. On Thursday, heads rolled, decisions were made, transitions occurred so fast, and literally it's great because these articles all hit in order. So you fast forward to Thursday, January 25th, 7:56 a.m. In the wake of the Larry Nassar sexual abuse scandal, Lou Anna Simon, may not know who she is, but you're about to learn who she is, president of Michigan State University, is resigning. Who would have knew? According to a letter posted on the school's website. Nassar is a former longtime school employee. He was sentenced yet Wednesday up to 175 years in prison for the sexual assault of young female athletes. Throughout my career, I have consistently and persistently spoken and worked on behalf of Team MSU. I have tried to make it not about me, Simon wrote. I urge those who have supported my work to understand that I cannot make it about me now. Therefore, I am tendering my resignation as president according to the terms of my employment agreement. The chairman of the board of trustees said the group has accepted Simon's resignation and will work out the details of her departure over the rest of the week. We greatly appreciate her integrity, her many contributions, and her willingness to continue to serve through transition, Brian Breslin said in a statement posted below Simon's on the MSU website. Simon had recently come under fire for what critics says is the mishandling of the Nassar scandal. They say the school's leader of 13 years had been tone deaf and needs to be among those held accountable for what happened while Nassar was employed as a sports physician at MSU from 1997 to 2016. The Detroit News recently reported that misconduct allegations against Nassar reached at least 14 MSU representatives in the 2 decades before his arrest. Michigan State maintains that no official believed Nassar committed sexual abuse until newspapers began reporting on the allegations during the summer of 2016. Any suggestion that the university engaged in a cover-up is simply false, an MSU statement asserted last week. Simon expressed sympathy for Nassar's many victims. To the survivors, I can never say enough that I am so sorry that a trusted, renowned physician was truly such an evil, evil person who inflicted such harm under the guise of medical treatment, she said. I know that we all share the same resolve to do whatever it takes to avert such tragedies here and elsewhere. The key ingredient and the key statement that I'm going to share and why I'm sharing this whole story, our voices are being heard. Tom Leonard, the Speaker of the House of Michigan, applauded Simon's decision while criticizing the school. I am glad Lou Anna Simon finally did the right thing. The university's response to this crisis simply hasn't been good enough, and I hope that changes going forward for the sake of both the victims and the entire Michigan State University community. Sterling Reisman, a former collegiate diver who was one of Nassar's victims, said she hoped Simon's resignation would be a first positive change. It's encouraging to see that our voices are being heard, and I'm grateful for her acknowledgement of this tragedy. Olivia Cowan and Larissa Boyce were among several of Nassar's victims who said during their impact statements that the university failed to protect them. Nassar treated many non-MSU students, many of them children or teenagers, on campus. A public apology after you've hid behind this monster for over 20 years will never be enough. Where were you when we needed you? Cowan recently told the court. If you would have only listened to the women that brought complaints and concerns over these years, this would have saved so many women and children from being abused and from all the scars this has created. And it breaks down the full story. And now with this being done, Michigan State is getting the black eye, or getting it's kind of bringing them to light, and it's drawing about concerns that we wonder about. Because it even addressed, with this being addressed and with this story being stated, it then pulled in the football program and the basketball program. They wanted to talk to Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo, the Spartans basketball team had a game. They played, I think they won. After the game, they were trying to get an interview to talk to Izzo related to the story. He didn't want to talk about it. So that looked really bad. Why I'm sharing this story, and I talked about this, and I've been, for the life of me, most of this week and a little bit of last week, for these past couple of days and last week, I've been trying to look at this story, and I've been like, what is this referred to when you get into this type of a situation that could potentially affect your school and your program? And it's known as the death penalty. When we think about it, we talked about this last year with the Penn State Lions, as far as their whole story going the way it did and how it affected them, potentially getting the death penalty. So we have this story, mind you. This is mainly saying that the president decided to resign. All right, great, cool, perfect, no problem. We can accept that. We good with that. So then you look, and another day has passed, and of all people, MSU athletic director Mark Hollis decides to resign. The fallout, and this is from NBC News, and this story broke on Friday night. The fallout from the Larry Nassar sex abuse scandal continued Friday, with Michigan State University athletic director Mark Hollis stepping down, saying he believed it would help the victims heal. No, it's not going to help the victims heal. It's just you trying to get out of hot water. But the school's basketball and football coaches, whose programs were the subject of an ESPN investigation published just hours after Hollis's resignation, said they had no plans to resign. I'm definitely not retiring, the school men's basketball coach Tom Izzo said Friday after his team defeated the Wisconsin Badgers 76-71. Hollis's resignation came days after the NCAA announced it has opened an investigation into MSU's handling of allegations against Nassar, who had his sports medicine practice at the Big Ten school and was also the Olympics team doctor for USA Gymnastics. Something that's also not talked about in any of these stories is we're hearing about Michigan State, we're hearing about USA Gymnastics. What other schools or what other groups was he affiliated with that they could possibly put sentences down against him? Just something to think about. It also follows under fire resignation. That's a good way to put it. Under fire resignation of MSU president Lou Anna Simon, and comes as student protesters are demanding members of the board of trustees leave as well. Because one of the trustees made a very vocal comment or reference related to this situation, and no one's letting him off the hook by a landslide. This was not an easy decision for my family, and you should not jump to any conclusions based on our decision. Listen to facts, Hollis said in a statement. I am not running away from anything. I am running towards something. Comfort, compassion, and understanding for the survivors in our community. Togetherness, time, and love for my family. Hollis said he did not know about any allegations against Nassar until they became public in September of 2016, and he said he was not informed of a 2014 investigation by MSU into one woman's accusations, which determined Nassar had not molested her. At the same time, there is so much pain and so much healing that needs to be done. In a small way, my wife, Nancy, and I believe that this may help the process. He said he was not asked to retire, and that some of the MSU coaches told him he should not leave. I believe this was the right time, he said, citing testimony by Nassar's accusers at an extraordinary sentence hearing as the impetus for this decision. Hollis, an MSU graduate who had been athletic director since 2008, said he would cooperate with any investigations. After his announcement, ESPN Outside the Lines then published an investigation that detailed incidents in the basketball and football programs and what it called a pattern of widespread denial, interaction, and information suppression of such allegations by officials. And the story goes into more as to what happened. Is when I say heads roll and folks naturally panic, people are all about doing whatever they can do by nature to save face. The only thing is, picking this point to save face was like the wrong time. And now it's not even on the basis of whether they look bad or not doing it. It's just you need to let this thing be what it is and not try to cover it up like no one's going to know what went down. And that's what I feel is being done wrong the most out of all of this. I'm glad he got the sentence. I have a feeling I have a feeling Michigan State is going to get the death penalty. I know I'm like that's like a huge or an aggressive projection of forecast, but I can see them getting the death penalty for this incident because you need to send the right message in the right way, and that's the right way to do it. Sorry if y'all hearing static. My mic is having like special moments when it wants to. So we have one more story for the sports side, and then we're gonna get into the stuff. Like I said, stuff isn't too bad. It's just some fun stuff, and then we got we have stuff. Half it as a week of stuff, half it as a week of sports. So as we always do, we'll get into that. So we have the Hall of Fame for Major League Baseball being announced, and they were able to provide and state who has made it and who is still on the outside waiting to get in. On Wednesday, Chipper Jones, Vlad Guerrero, Jim Thome, and Trevor Hoffman were all elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame via the 2018 Baseball Writers Association of America ballot. They'll be inducted into Cooperstown on July 19th alongside the pair of modern Baseball Era Committee honorees, Jack Morris and Alan Trammell, who were elected in December. In the 5 cycles since the infamous 2003 shutout, the writers have elected 16 players, surpassing the 1951, 55, and 52 to 56 totals of 13 honorees for the most in a 5-year span. Beyond that, there's much more to digest with regards to the results, starting with the near-miss candidate Edgar Martinez. With an eye toward modern electoral history and more recent trends, what follows here is my rundown of the fates of all 33 candidates on the ballot, some of which will figure into my updated 5-year outlook on Monday. So it's kind of a shoe-in. They said Chipper Jones is kind of a lock. Vlad Guerrero should be fine. Jim Thome, first year, no surprise. He's been nothing but a hitter with the Indians. He was eighth all time home run list with 612. He is the first baseman elected on the first ballot since Frank Thomas in 2014. He's the 5th member of the 9-member 600 home run club to be elected after Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Aaron, and Ken Griffey. Suffice it to say that it could be a while before Barry Bonds, A-Rod, Sosa, or the still active Albert Pujols joins them. Trevor Hoffman, they had him as a possibility, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he is going to be likely to go. And then you kind of get into those question marks and those concerns. Edgar Martinez, he's been tracking above 500 among published ballots as recently as Monday. He was left off one too many to create what would have been the writer's first electoral quintet since 1936. Um, some other names that are either trying to get to the hall and it's their first time being on the ballot, or ones who are just not going to have a chance. There's Mike Mussina, the dynamic duo of Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. Clemens was involved with the juice. Bonds was involved with the juice. Clemens had a unique situation because Clemens would be back and forth between major league, minor league. He got a lot of minor league exposure. Like he exposed a lot of minor league teams from just practicing and playing, just to show that he still had a good arm, for his age. Bonds is gonna be a while. I think the committee is adamant related to the incidents and everything that went on regarding steroids. Just plain and simple. Kurt Schilling, he's not really high. Um, let's see. Schilling regained most of the support that he lost from 2006 to 2017 in the wake of his inflammatory comments on social media. However, he burned 2 years of eligibility in the process and appears to be in for a slow climb to election. Of the 6 candidates to receive between 50 and 60 in year 6, one has yet to be elected by any means. Of the other 5, Kiner and Reigns in 4 years and Gulp Jim Rice in 9 years. Time Schilling doesn't have. So it's just mainly, right now, Schilling is just kind of fighting the battle. You got Omar Vizquel, you got Larry Walker. He's in year number 8 of his eligibility. He posted the ballot's second largest gain, which was he went up 12.2%. Fred McGriff be his 4th year on the ballot. Then you have Manny Ramirez, Jeff Kent, Gary Sheffield, and Sammy Sosa. They're kind of closing things out. Both Sosa, a 6-year candidate, and Sheffield, a 4th-year one, are in no man's land regarding BBWAA electoral history, though the pair can look to the VC-elected Richie Ashburn and Bill Mazeroski for hope. As for 5th-year candidate Kent, Ashburn and Mazeroski both did even worse in their 5th years. Trammell offers some hope for the slugging second baseman, who will be eligible for his first today's game ballot in 2024. Then you have Billy Wagner, Scott Rowland, Andrew Jones, Johan Santana. Then you get down to like legit 2% and under. Excuse me. Jamie Moyer, Johnny Damon, Hideki Matsui, Chris Carpenter, Kerry Wood. It's going to be a while. Levon Hernandez, and Carlos Lee. And then you got folks it's so many players as far as that are just in the, hey, they're on the list, so let's see what they got, see if it's a chance. So it's just kind of coming down to keeping an eye for what could or couldn't happen with their stature or placement on ballots for the next couple of years. So that ends our sports for now. We'll end on a bit of a fun sports note, and we'll go into that later on. Right now, we're now into our stuff category. And like I said, I didn't really get a lot of stories, and I did state that I did mention earlier that there was a story that I wanted to address. Anyone who is here in the United States knows about Evo. It is one of the biggest fighting gaming tournaments. The U.S. version, or the U.S. form of Evo, comes in July. It'll be in Las Vegas. But until then, they have Evo Japan, which just happened last weekend. There were quite a few tournaments that were played. As I listen to the show, I will definitely add that in the show notes as a story. The links for those players who participated, those tournaments that were won. It was good because it's one of the first big tournaments since Street Fighter Arcade Edition came out. Haven't talked about that in too many episodes. I will give kind of a condensed story while I have the opportunity, since I have a space filler for stuff. Arcade Edition is a lot different from the original Street Fighter in the event that, one, you'll get all the characters from Season 1 and Season 2, which is great. Number 2, The bar meters are a lot. The HUD and display of Street Fighter is a lot different. So it's kind of almost what Mortal Kombat did a few years ago, where they brought out Mortal Kombat XL, and eventually they brought out I think it was 40. They brought out one version of Mortal Kombat X. That's what it was. They brought out Mortal Kombat X. It did okay. Everyone liked it. It did, it fulfilled its job. But then Mortal Kombat XL came out, and that got more of the attention of gamers. It still kind of played at tournaments, but not as big. But Street Fighter Five, you talk about, if you think of fighting game community, you can't talk about Street Fighter Five in that. It has to be included. So Mortal Kombat made its mark, and I'm sorry, Street Fighter made its mark. They changed a lot of things. They added a couple V trigger features, which I think is pretty cool. You can pick which V trigger you like to use for your character, which like I said, I like that. A lot of the characters, as they always call it, they nerfed and buffed a lot of characters, so that was new. But all in all, it wasn't. It's not a bad game from what I've seen. I'm not sure if I've shared this on the podcast, but I'll share it anyway. A lot of you may or may not know that I was an Xbox lover. I had the 360, I had the Xbox One. But my Xbox One decided to have a bit of an episode, so I am looking to convert soon. I'm just waiting for the right time and the right funds to kind of just hit at the right time. And I'll be looking to do PlayStation, so that means goodbye Gears, goodbye Halo. I'll probably be doing Call of Duty a little bit more on there, but we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. But as many of you know, I am the phone connoisseur. I've had my iPhone now for a couple of years. I've been on iPhone for a while, but before iPhone, I've always been an Android guy. I pretty much had every Android possible. The last Android I had was the Note 4, and then I kind of switched and made changes and moved forward. But Samsung will be unveiling the Galaxy S9 on February 25th. So they've been given a couple of teases, and they've emphasized the story related to the reimagined camera. Samsung has started sending out invites for the Unpacked event this year, where it will take the wraps off the Galaxy S9. The date for that is going to be February the 25th. Its upcoming flagship phone will make its debut at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, just like what DJ Co., the Korean conglomerate's mobile chief, promised at CES. The teaser Samsung posted on Twitter hints at the S9's reimagining camera. While the company didn't say anything more than that, one of the phone's rumored features is a variable aperture camera. According to the rumors going around, the device's 12 megapixel shooter will be able to switch between f1.5 and f2.4 apertures. As you might know, f-stop pertains to the opening that lets light into the camera. The bigger the number is, the smaller the opening and the smaller the amount of light that can go in. Having the ability to let more light in could improve a phone camera's performance in low lighting. Of course, we still don't know if this is the feature Samsung is hinting at. We would just have to wait for the big reveal a month from now. I'm looking forward to this. I know people will probably give me the hardest time. Like, well, you're an iPhone guy. Why are you looking? I always like to see what a phone is going to do that is going to make that big change. Apple has not made big changes. As an iPhone user for nearly 3 years, Apple hasn't made big changes. I'm okay with that. I don't look for phones to make big changes, but I also don't run out and get new phones every year. So that's me. Android is no different. It's going to come down to that need or demand for a phone. But some people have to have the newest and the latest and greatest. But as I always tell people, and as you learn with technology, always let them get the first batch off and let that bad batch kind of go through its motion so that you can learn from what was done wrong, so that when the next set of phones come out for that brand or for that particular phone, they work. Because sometimes having a phone that does or does not work is never a good idea. And I'm waiting. Like I said, I'm gonna see what they have in store. That's my best thing I can say about that phone. as to what's coming. On today's or this week's spotlight, and before we continue, I'm going to give a funny story because I'll go ahead and bring this to light on the podcast. I always love, and this will kind of be like the stuff, and it also kind of be a little bit about music. I love music. I listen to a lot of music on a consistent basis. I couldn't tell you how much exactly, but I listen to enough. There was a stint of music and artistry that would make you wonder who did it worse and how bad did it get at one point. And for me, that point and that stage by far was 50 Cent and Ja Rule. Now they were near the same time, but not. They weren't. They were far from each other, but not too close. They were far from each other, but they were pretty close at the time as far as like when they came out. So I looked and I compiled and thought about like the worst songs that each of those artists did. Ja Rule's worst song was "Holla Holla" to me, and I know there was like a lot of people was into that and it was trendy at the time. And 50 Cent's one of his worst songs was "Wankster." So a question generated, and I asked it online, and I'm asking my listeners today: if you had to pick between which song was the worst, do you think it was "Holla Holla" by Ja Rule, or do you think it was 50 Cent "Wankster"? You can leave comments on Instagram. You can leave them on Twitter. You can leave. I have the straw poll. I will copy and paste it. I will share it. I also can. You can also email me your responses, pastpodcastbt@gmail.com. And I may, if I get enough feedback or responses about it, I could talk about it on the show because I would love to get people's feedback related to that. So today's artist spotlight, and I shared that story because at first I was like, I'm tempted to do a weekly spotlight on both 50 Cent and Ja Rule as far as careers and just look at what happened. Because I know with 50 Cent we would have to talk about power and all that stuff, which is fine. And Ja Rule has been kind of just, he was here today, gone tomorrow. But today's artist spotlight is another local. Well, not when I say local, like in Virginia, not in Richmond, but we have Pharrell Williams. He was born on April the 5th of 73. He was born in Virginia Beach. He has become a leading force in popular music as a performer, songwriter, and producer. He got into music at a young age. He kind of gave a quote that is used to sit in front of the stereo and play records. He would sit with his aunt and listen to music. One of the first albums he bought was by a hip hop group, A Tribe Called Quest. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not. He was the oldest of three, had two brothers. He started out by tapping rhythms on school desks. He went to Princess Anne High School where he felt a little out of place, and he told London Evening Standard he lived in Normanville. He lived in Normalville, USA, and he didn't look like the average kid. He eventually teamed up with Chad Hugo. They started performing together and later became the acclaimed producing duo, the Neptunes. Now, this is where my music folks will get a little bit of knowledge because you know that everyone knows the Neptunes. One of Williams' early breaks came thanks to a producer. You might know him as well, Teddy Riley. This is not a name dropping episode. This is just, or a name dropping artist spotlight. It's just a lot of retroness to this story. Pharrell produced and contributed to Rump Shaker by Rex and Effects, as I always like to call it, the infamous chick who was not playing out a note on the saxophone, but I digress. With Neptunes, Williams and Hugo first broke through as a producing duo for various artists such as Old Dirty Bastard and Jay-Z. They branched out into pop music, working with Britney Spears and Usher. He also started performing, making guest vocal appearances on songs such as Excuse Me Miss, by Jay Z. In '03, he made his first solo effort with the song Frontin'. They picked up their first Grammy Awards for their work on Justin Timberlake's 2002 Justify album and for Producer of the Year non classical. Hugo and Shay Haley Williams had them join for and found success with the rap rock act Nerd, which stands for Nothing Ever Really Dies, which is relevant to his most recent album. The group put out several well received albums, including Seeing Sounds, um, which was in '08. Williams also released his first solo album, 2006's In My Mind, and branched out into film in 2010 by creating the score for the animated hit Despicable Me. Despicable Me was where it all grew and really flourished. I mean, he was flourishing anyway, but he really flourished thanks to Despicable Me. In 2013, Williams was instrumental in making two mega hits, Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines and Daft Punk's Get Lucky. He co-wrote and sang on both of those tracks. If you go back and listen, if you have not gotten a good taste in music, go back and listen to Daft Punk's Get Lucky. You will be surprised by what you find in that song. Like I always love listening to that album because it was such a that's one of those albums that come close to me, and I'm just being honest. Um, the following year, he earned um, he earned individual Grammys for Record of the Year with Get Lucky and Album of the Year for contributing to Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. That's the name of the album, by the way. He also won Best Pop Duo Group Performance and again for Producer of the Year non classical. Also in 2003, Williams reached the top of the charts with a solo effort Happy from Despicable Me 2 soundtrack, with the track staying at number one for weeks and setting a Billboard record as a crossover chart phenomenon. Happy also earned Williams his first Academy Award nomination, with the singer producer performing the song live on the Oscar telecast and serenading actors nominees Amy Adams, Lupita Nyong'o, and Meryl Streep in the audience. The same year, he released his second solo album, Girl, and early 2015 saw more accolades for Happy, with a visibly surprised Williams earning a Grammy for Best Pop Solo Performance for a live version of the song, along with Best Music Video. Girl also won for Best Urban Contemporary Album. However, and this was always a fun story that just was random. Williams landed in court having to contend with a countersuit filed more than a year earlier from the estate of Marvin Gaye. He and Thicke were charged with contempt with committing copyright infringement by taking major musical elements from the song Got to Give It Up for the hit Blurred Lines. After proceedings in which Thicke testified that he had little to do with the writing of the song, in March 2015, the jury ruled in favor of Gaye's family, who were awarded $7.3 million in damages and profit shares. The jury also ruled that neither Williams or Thicke had purposely committed infringement. The two planned to appeal the court's overall decision. There were other projects that he worked on. Williams also is also passionate about design. He co-founded two fashion labels, Billionaire Boys Club and Ice Cream, with Tomaki Nigo Nagayo. Working with Marc Jacobs, Williams also designed a line of sunglasses, and he joined forces with the Adidas brand in 2014. The clothing made with Adidas will feature fabrics from Bionic Yarn, a textile company owned by Williams. In addition to fashion, Williams has sought out different types of media projects. He signed on to act as a creative director for Carmeloot TV in 2011, also investing in his effort to produce programming for the young, fashion-forward, and tech-oriented viewers across different platforms, including the web. In September of 2014, Williams joined Adam Levine, Blake Shelton, and fellow rookie coach Gwen Stefani, whom he worked with on number one hit Holla Back Girl on the singing competition TV series The Voice. He continued as a coach on the show during winter and spring the following year. Then in early October 2015, Williams released a children's picture book, Happy, inspired by his award-winning song. The title hit the New York Times bestsellers list. Now, one thing that's not pointed out or was not updated in this story because it's more recent is that they did Nerd. Now, Pharrell didn't bring out this album, but Nerd did bring out an album called No One Ever Really Dies. So if you have not listened to that album, you may want to invest an ear towards it when time allows. Um, Pharrell is always Pharrell is the definition of a trendsetter, and you learn the trend. You learn his setting of the trim of the trim. You learn his setting of the trend when it came to Happy. The fact that Oprah, and this isn't in that article, but Oprah had him on to talk about the the song Happy and how it made others feel, and he didn't realize the extent of what Happy had did to people. Where even to this day, like years later, like if a person plays the song Happy, it can take you out of whatever you got going on to just kind of say because I'm happy, clap along. If you like, you just get into that zone and that groove, and everyone wasn't doing that before. So now to have a song that gives that opportunity, that gives that moment of doing that, it's pretty well valued now. So, Pharrell, keep doing what you're doing. Like, it's ironic because I hadn't seen the song or seen the video until I was, looking at it this morning. But I see you in Stir Fry. He's in the new song with Migos, the Culture 2 album. If you have not listened to it, I'm not white noising on purpose. I'm just white noising because it's my thought process of saying the right thing and also being honest. If you liked the culture, no problem. If you're old school and you're gonna be a Joe Budden, and I'm not using Joe Budden's references heavy, it's just a statement. If you have an old school mindset and aren't too much into new music, the culture too may not get your attention. And that's all I'm gonna say. I was proud because I heard Takeoff a little bit more in this album. So I was like, oh, okay. So he does rap. But anyway, not me being petty or throwing shade, just talking about what I see. So there's that story. Now, this week's asses of the week are gonna be fun. And I'm gonna explain why, because they're stories that I would have never expected, but they're here. Because you find things and it's talked about, and you're like, okay, this is a story, whatever. So the first story is tech related. There's an app that exists. Now, first and foremost, I will tell you that this is a paid app, and it's weird for it to be a paid app. But I mean, as with anything, people got to make money off of their business. So I'm gonna give you the story, and you just kind of have fun with this. On a good day, my phone battery never drops below 35%. A dead phone is a useless one, and the spike of anxiety that accompanies that fear is enough to send me scurrying for the nearest outlet. But when my charger is home in bed and I'm out at a bar, there's nothing I can do but embrace the inevitable. My battery is on its way to its own funeral. At the very least, I found a conversation app that turns that feeling of desperation into anticipation. Welcome to Die With Me, the chat room app you can only use when your phone is about to die. If your battery has anything higher than a 5% charge, Die With Me won't open up its doors. Once you are in, if you charge up to higher than 5%, it will automatically kick you out of the room. It's a place to bond for a fleeting moment with strangers sharing the same near-death phone experience. One with a built-in countdown timer on your conversations, What will you say in the moments before your screen goes black? At a time when big social media feels like a never-ending wash of bad news and toxicity, Die With Me is a small, safe haven that offers evanescent human connection as a reward for a dying device. Artist Dries DePorter and developer David Serpent were inspired by the experience of getting lost in a city because of a dead battery. I think everyone with a smartphone has experienced this sort of situation once. He tells The Verge via email, as a digital artist, I really wanted to do something with this feeling. Die With Me resembles a straightforward 90s chat room where everyone is prompted to enter a username and then dropped into a single room. As your companion's batteries drain, their remaining percentage is displayed next to their name. A countdown that inevitably ends with their phones going dead or logging off. The Porter and Superint consider the app more of an art project than a game or social platform. The duo plans to release a book later down the road featuring the room's conversations, which span anything from urgent descriptions of low battery predicaments to tongue in cheek guessing games where the prize is a fictional charger. You can share the same feeling with other people, Deporter says. It's a feeling that our generation understands, the feeling of being dependent on technology. Die With Me provides both a fleeting sense of exclusivity and a reason to look forward to a low percentage. It's a club you can only temporarily join, a secret room that vanishes when your time is up. Deporter didn't provide details on how many people have downloaded the service, but says there is an average of 5 people in the chat at any given time. It offers a combination of pleasant anonymity and random chance reminiscent of early internet chat rooms where people popped in and out as they please. And then it goes into more detail related to the app. Um, the app is $1. I may have said that before, but I'll share it again. It is $1. Some of the comments that people have left related to the app, I know at least to Apple, are saying it as it's it's pretty much. I don't use. I mean, I guess I can use the term. It's very aidsy when it comes to like what conversations are had when your phone battery is low. And the odd part about it is, if my phone is at that low of a battery, I'm not using any bit of percentage. The tough part about it, and I'm going to share this. So, all right, first let me backtrack. This is the answer of the week. One, because you had to pay for it. Two, because of all the things that I'm going to be thinking about when my phone is at 5% or lower, is let me go download, let me go open this app. Because if you don't already have it downloaded, you're already behind the eight ball. No pun intended. But you're already behind. So then you're trying to download this app, play this game, try to figure out how it works. Or not, and it's not even a game. You're sitting here with other people. Somebody may be in the chat and just talking all crazy and reckless. Then your phone is going to eventually die. And it's like in the last few seconds of that, the last thing you're concerned about is, let me have a conversation with people on here just to talk to folks who I know, not a slight bit of who they are. A little weird, but to each his own. I've had folks who I personally known that would decide when their phone was about to die, that's when they would call me. Or they would call me and talk to me on the phone as their phone is slowly dying. And then they'll say, my phone's on 2%. And a couple of minutes later or a couple of seconds later, phone just dies. And then it's like, well, why would you call somebody with a low battery percentage? Like when my phone is under 20%, the last thing I'm doing is talking to anybody like phone wise, like call wise. Texting, little stuff like that, I've done it. Like yesterday I went to the gym. My watch was at 15%. No, I was about to go to the gym. Watch was at 15%. My phone might have been at 20%. And I literally had to break out a power bank and like charge both of them right then and there. It happens. It's another charger that I need to find because that was my everything. That was my go-to back in the day. But I digress. But my point is, of all the things I'm looking at when I'm at a 5% charge, the last thing I'm concerned about is if my phone's gonna die. Who can I talk to? Not happening. I don't see it. That's just me. But to each his own. The other ass of the week is the weirdest one I've seen. So the article states police called to Kansas men basketball dorm for man offering free throw advice. Just let that sink in, process it for a little bit, and then we're going to chop up this story. With 3 minutes and 37 seconds left in Tuesday's game between Kansas and Oklahoma, and the Jayhawks leading 78 to 76, the Sooners decided to intentionally foul Udoka Azubuike and send them to the line. Azubuike missed the front end of the 1-and-1. Oklahoma employed this strategy 3 more times before the end of the game. At 3 minutes 11 with Kansas lead 78 to 77. At 2:53 with Kansas up 78-77, and with 1:56 with Kansas up 80 to 79. And each time Azubuike failed to make an attempt. He went 1 for 8 from the line for the game and 0 for 6 in the final minute of the 85 to 80 Oklahoma win. As a team, Kansas went 6 for 14 from the line while the Sooners shot 20 of 25 from the charity stripe. It appears this performance pushed one Kansas fan so far that he decided to take it upon himself to offer some help. According to Sarah Shepard of Lawrence Journal World, University of Kansas police were called to the men's basketball dorm Wednesday because a man reportedly showed up multiple times offering free throw advice. The call came in around 3:30 p.m., but by the time the police arrived to the dorm, the man was not there. Deputy Chief James Anguiano said, according to Shepard. According to Shepard, Anguiano added that the man is not a Kansas student and the police didn't plan to file a report for trespassing. Anguiano said the officer at the scene did not provide him the name of the player who the advice was intended for to relay that to Shepard, but it seems likely that it was Azubuike, a 7-foot sophomore from Nigeria who was shooting just 37.5% from the line this season. As a team, the Jayhawks are shooting 69.5% on free throws, which is 8th in the 10-team Big 12 and 223rd among 351 Division I teams. All right, so here's where Ass of the Week gets fun. If there are things that you can state, hey, I'm going to call the police for this, or I'm going to file trespassing report or whatever, of all the reasons to come up with, the mere fact that someone is trying to help a player on your team shoot free throws better, that would be the dumbest, most retarded reason to have police show up. But it happened. And it's very random but very ironic. I truly wonder sometimes where people's head is when they do things, but things happen, so you just kind of accept it for what it is. I only had that as Ass of the Week because it was just a weird story. Like, somebody's helping you with shooting free throws, and we'll call the police and may file we're not gonna file a trespassing report, but we're concerned because this guy keeps coming around trying to give advice. Makes a lot of sense, but that's neither here nor there. We are less than a week away from the Super Bowl. I didn't watch it yesterday. I usually don't watch it, but I'm going to get notes and information about it, see how Media Day was. So I'll bring that to light. It probably wasn't a lot because most times Media Day is what players make Media Day, if that's a good way to put it. It can either be a fun time or it can be a waste of time. Pick your poison. I will say this, and this is, I don't know, like for some reason I'm realizing like the more I do these podcasts, I like to make like the ending a fun little, here's something for you to go home with and something for you to think about. As humans and as people, we want satisfaction. We want peace. We want things to be on this wavelength that sometimes we get there, sometimes we don't. What helps us in getting there is by taking time to understand others. I don't think any of it has to do with being misunderstood. I think a lot of it has to do with getting others to understand you by sharing who and how you are. Sometimes no one's going to know what's going on if you don't tell them, because in most cases, no one's going to stop and ask you what's wrong. If it's not talked about or if it's not addressed, then it won't be presented. Bottom line. To add to that and to close the show, carrying your thoughts, we all do it. But carrying your thoughts while at least having that source or that person to talk to goes a long way. And yeah, if y'all heard that scream in the background, my bad. You want things to be in place for the right reasons in the right moments. And that's what I'm gonna leave y'all with tonight or today. Everything may not fall to this will be my closing and this will be kind of like the cap. Tell all be all. Everything may or may not fall into place as you want it to, but that doesn't mean that you don't have time for it to get things right. So as always, I appreciate y'all tuning in. If you're not following on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, past podcasts, I'm on all social media platforms. If you want to go back and listen to shows as shared earlier, pastpodcast.com. And until next time, go Eagles. The Past signing out. Peace.